and Yashar Koach. Either sitting in one of our synagogue spaces or gathered around the table with our loved ones, candle lights glowing, kiddush cup twinkling silver, challah nesting under its cover, or if you're Rabbi K and his family, you're saying what a beautiful challah it is, waiting for it to be devoured, there's every chance that we might start singing the following. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon. See, we know it so well. Its soothing melody so deeply ingrained in our hearts and minds. But did you know that this famous Shabbat song comes to us from the 16th and 17th century Kabbalists? Did you further know that it is based on the tale in the Talmud that two ministering angels, one good and one evil, accompany a person home on Friday night? The story goes that if one reaches home and there is a lamp glowing and a table laden, the good angel will say, "May it be your will next Shabbat." And the evil angel responds reluctantly, "Amen." However, if that person's home is not prepared, the evil angel declares, "May it be your will next Shabbat." And the good angel has no choice but to reply, "Amen." Interpreting this tale, we might gain a little insight into the trepidation that the rabbis felt in regard to the Shabbat. Abraham Joshua Heschel's palace in time was and is a blessed break from the weekly routine. Yet it also brought with it the dangers of the dark, and the possibility that one may be stuck without light or warmth if one was too late, due to the inability to perform anything remotely close to work. We encounter a similar sense of trepidation in this week's parasha, Chukat. In it, we learn of the red heifer, a cow who has never worked, is deemed tmimah, perfect and without blemish, and then sacrificed. There were several elements of the intricate ritual that follows which caught my attention. For example, the red heifer must be slaughtered in the priest Elazar's presence, but not by him. The cow shall be burned in his sight, but not by Elazar himself. The ashes of the cow have to be gathered up and taken outside of the camp to be scattered, but not by Elazar personally. What Elazar does do, however, is sprinkle the heifer's blood 7 times, using his fingers to splatter it specifically towards the Ohel Moed, the tent of meeting. He, like the one who burns the heifer and the one who takes the ashes outside of the camp, is subsequently rendered impure. He too must wash his clothes and his body in order to differentiate between a state of being tahor, clean, or tameh, unclean. This passage admittedly left me a bit bewildered, because I couldn't quite put my finger over why Elazar, as a priest, would not be the one who performed the entirety of these sacrificial rites, or why this bizarre animal offering was even necessary in the first place. We also, I feel, do not get a logical explanation as to the purpose of this sacrifice. The Avot de Rabbi Natan suggests that the red heifer was a sin offering, meant to rectify impurities and ensure that this newfound purity would last for generations to come. Jewish columnist Bethany Mandel posits that the red heifer is a manifestation of the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, a very human inclination when we are hungry, tired, bored, upset, or thirsty, and so on, as the Israelites were during this very moment in time as they continue to wander in the wilderness. This was evidenced later in our Torah portion, with Moses hitting the rock in anger to draw water, after the Israelites complained to him bitterly of thirst. Mandel subsequently sees the red heifer as a symbol of the restoration of faith and the gaining of leverage over the Yetzer Hara, despite the difficulties that the Israelites faced. Our parasha will proceed to tell us that the red heifer was actually a sacrifice made upon contact with a dead body, the laws and procedures of which our portion will then go on to detail extensively. Taking all of these interpretations into account, it made me think that perhaps the red heifer represents a broad category which perhaps encompasses each of these ideas in one, that of the liminal space. On one hand, we are a people who are enchanted by the unpredictability of the liminal space, the idea of being caught between one status and another. By way of just a few examples, we sing Hamavdil bein Kodesh lechol, God who separates between the sacred and mundane, every Saturday night during our Havdalah ceremony, in order to distinguish between the holiness of the Shabbat and the regular week which we usher in. We utilize the mikvah so that an individual who chooses Judaism enters the Mayim Chayim, the living waters, and after dunking 3 times, exits them as a Jew. A wedding couple steps under the chuppah as individuals and recesses back down the aisle as married, forever intertwined. The very first passage of our Talmud is the machloket, the debate, over when the sky is the right shade of blue for saying the Shema in the morning. In other words, when exactly does night end and day begin, so that we can recite our blessings at their correct appointed time, avoiding ambiguity. On the other hand, maybe we are, or maybe subconsciously, maybe consciously, maybe subconsciously, we are afraid of this liminality, terrified of the in-between and the lack of clarity it brings. Professor of Jewish liturgy at the Hebrew Union College in Jerusalem, Rabbi Dalia Marx, calls this chaos and refers to the Talmudic dictum of Shena echad mishishim lamita, that sleep is 1/60th of death. For the rabbis, sleep was a scary state of being, as it meant being exempt from the mitzvot, since one has no control over their body when dreaming. No real assurance that they would wake up when tomorrow arrived, and no real certainty that the sun would continue to shine. Put differently, there were real physical and psychological barriers that the rabbis perceived when submitting themselves to sleep, and this warranted divine protection. It is for this precise reason that we recite the brachot of Hashkivenu, lie us down in peace, in the evening, and Moda ani lefanecha, I am grateful before you, in the morning. In terms of our red heifer, it too is a symbol of liminality, sitting on the breach between life and death, the pure and the impure, our Yetzer HaTov, our better instincts, and the Yetzer Hara, our not-so-best selves. The red heifer also presents us with the dilemma of encountering a fork in the road, with the Israelites literally finding themselves on the outskirts of several encampments in Chukat as they attempt to cross into the Promised Land. In the uncertainty of the liminal space, we might glean from our ancient texts that we are faced with 2 options. Option 1 is that we can let the liminal space completely overwhelm us. The people of Israel are still, in this parasha, in the middle of the desert, unsettling in its liminality as they have left one home but not yet reached another. As aforementioned, they were without water. Thus, perhaps understandably, they gather against and they quarrel with Moses and Aaron, demanding to know how they are going to solve this dire situation. The people long for the stability and the certainty of Egypt, where, despite being enslaved for hundreds of years and many generations, they knew that they would always have a steady supply of grain and figs and grapes and pomegranates, and of course, plentiful water. Moses, in turn, gets so overwhelmed that he lets his own Yetzer Hara overcome him and hits the rock twice, and according to the Midrash Tanchuma, this double striking is out of anger. However, this results in the ultimate consequence, and in the very next pasuk, Moses is told by God that due to his lack of trust in the divine, he will not be the one leading the people into the land of Israel. So, If being overwhelmed will prove ineffective or even detrimental, option 2 is to embrace the liminal space and let it empower us. We can instead view it as an opportunity for us to bring our gifts to one another and to our community. Although it is a sad occurrence, we learn in this parashah that the people of Israel which reached the wilderness of Zin, and Vatamot sham Miriam vatikaver sham velo haya mayim le'edah. Miriam dies and she is buried, but there was no water for the community. This seeming disconnect, or perhaps the very connection, gives rise to the rabbinic tradition that there was a miraculous well which travelled with the Israelites, that they may never be parched. In fact, this well is believed to have been so miraculous that it is listed in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, a tractate of the Mishnah, as one of 10 items that God creates on the eve of the very first Shabbat. Put differently, the well itself is a product of a liminal space. Additionally, the rabbis in also Midrash Tanhuma teach that 3 gifts were given to Israel by the merit of their leaders, Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, for bringing them out of the land of Egypt. These are the manna that falls from heaven to feed the Israelites when they are hungry, the cloud that shields the presence of God and guides Israel throughout the day, turning into a pillar of fire at night, and the well to provide drink to the thirsty. The rabbis elaborate that the manna was given on account of Moses, the pillar of cloud by merit of Aaron, and the well by merit of Miriam. In other words, each of them brought something special, their own unique contributions to easing the discomfort of the desert. We might now be able to see that Eliza too was brought into a liminal space, and subsequently had a duty to navigate his way out of it. Let's start with this notion of his sprinkling the blood 7 times. 7 is surely an intentional choice of the biblical author, as it is the Jewish number of shlemut, which comes from the same root as shalom and means wholeness or completion. In regards to our red heifer, Elazar, along with anyone who comes into contact with the sacrificial cow, is impure for 7 days, and on the 7th day, this period of impurity is complete, and they can return to their normal lives. More broadly, there are 7 days in the week, and the wedding couple encircle each other 7 times before stepping under their canopy, whole, unbroken circles as they pledge themselves to each other wholeheartedly and pray that their marriage may remain whole in turn. Our tradition may teach us that we have an uneasy relationship with the liminal moments we encounter every day, but may we all find shlemut, completeness, in the complexity of the in-between. No matter what we face, may we answer like the Shabbat angels. Amen. Ken Yiratzon.